The Five Rings Podcast with Duane Rollins and Kevin Laramee on the Sport Podcasting Network. Follow us and listen to us live on Twitter at Five Rings Podcast and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network for more content.
And good day, good night. Welcome to the Five Rings Podcast. I'm Kev Laramee, joined, as always, by Duane Rollins. It is the end of Day 5. Day 5 is wrapping up right in front of us, and we have a lot of stories to talk about. And, of course, our gold, silver, bronze, wood, and maybe poutine for breakfast this morning. Why not? Duane, how are you today?
I'm pretty well, although I'm going to argue with your classification of what meal I would eat now as breakfast. More like a midnight
dinner
snack.
For you. You would be like, okay, give me a pretzel or something.
Yeah. I asked my Google Assistant yesterday what day of the week it was, and we're only Day 5, so that's where I'm at. But
Day 5, but that doesn't tell you. Is it Monday, Tuesday? No, it's Wednesday. One game of Major League Soccer tonight. We don't care about that. It is, of course, the Olympics. Duane, we're gonna get used to this Olympics, of course, the timing, and then it'll be over.
Then I'll have to sort myself back out of it again. But no, it does feel like a proper Olympics at this point, because I am days are bleeding at this point, and that's because my sleep schedule I'm not quite on a 1 8-hour chunk yet. I'm more on like a 4-hour chunk, and then
Twice,
maybe
yeah.
And then maybe 3 at another time.
Yeah, I know. I feel the same way. For me, it's, I guess, a nap in the afternoon and a little longer at night. I guess I went to bed at 11 and woke up at 5. So give me 6 hours today. I was able to catch up on pretty much everything I wanted in between.
It was a bit of a lull night in the middle of the twilight hours tonight. Although I got sucked into the time trial, the cycling men's time trial. I tweeted something about it, and someone said, "Well, watch this." And then, like the sucker I am, I told you yesterday in the show, I was looking forward to finding out what I was going to discover last night. Well, it turned out it time travel. Time travel. I keep saying time trial.
Well, we wish it could be time traveling, and we can just time travel back in like 2018, just before the world stopped. But the time trial, we'll talk about it later. It is usually something I'm really into, but for some reason, this cycling season, I haven't really got into it as much. I know all the names and, of course, the stories to talk about. We'll talk about it later. But Primož Roglič has won the gold medal in the men's time trial. And Van Vleuten has won the gold medal on the women's side on the time trial. It's an interesting parcours, circuit. Of course, some part of it were on the Fuji cycling, not cycling, but racing track. So that's an interesting aspect, and obviously went to the mountains around it too. But that was a great thing. But Duane, this morning, or late last night and earlier today, big news in the world of gymnastics. Of course, we knew since yesterday Simone Biles had stopped doing the team competition. She has pulled out since then from the all-around final, and also just a few hours ago, Ellie Black of Canada has also pulled out of the all-around gymnastics final. And the reason for Ellie Black's pulling out of this tournament is an ankle injury, not the same ankle that she had ligament problems a year and a half ago. It's a different injury. She sprained her ankle about 3 weeks ago, she mentioned, before coming to Tokyo. And yesterday in training, she did sprain it a little bit again, and 2 days to go before the all-around final at that moment was too little to let it heal. August 3rd, the beam final, she has that in her crosshairs, and she's thinking that she can be healed in time to focus on the beam final. We don't know for Simone Biles if she will compete in the individual finals next week. She is qualified in all 4, and she is the favorite in all 4, and we will see how it unfolds. We wish both of these athletes the best for their health.
Yeah, the Black situation it's going to get less headlines, first off, although she did have I think a chance, particularly with Biles out of the field, to make some noise in some way and at least get a best ever result for Canadians. So it is a disappointing situation from an all-around situation here too. But I think with her, far easier for us to journalistically talk about it. It does seem pretty straightforward, the injury. I do think that there is a strategic element to their choice to pull out of the all-around. Although she could have maybe made some noise in this, it would have required an effort that was, awe-inspiring, like out of left field, like didn't quite see her doing this well. The world, like a career best on two apparatuses for her to get into a medal. Whereas on the beam, she's world-class already. If Biles is not in that event, which is possible, then she is not just, it's not just possible that she could get a medal. She might even at that point become a favorite to get one.
For a medal, for sure. Also, the thinking is if you forego a competition like the vault in the all-around final, a vault is the impact on the ankle, especially when it's a sprained ankle, and the likelihood of re-spraining an ankle on the vault in not only in the competition but in training is very high. Just the landing and the mat, and especially when you have a sprained ankle, you don't need as much to maybe re-injure it. I think that's a wise decision considering these aspects. For Simone Biles, we wish her the best. There's definitely something that is not right. And if you, as an athlete, believe it's not right, then you have 100% of that power to decide what you need to do.
Of course, yeah. Look, you're right. It's a situation that has not often been verbalized quite as candidly as it has been now. I am sure that there have been other situations in the Olympics and in pro sports before where athletes have stepped away or have withdrawn rather than have said outright that they're withdrawn because their head's not in it. They've said something like, I pulled a hamstring, and we're none the wiser. So on that level, it's good that they're having the conversation in this particular way. And I think we all recognize this. That one thing I will say, and I'll say it very carefully, is like, obviously there's a lot of idiots out there on social media that are going to, try and play amateur psychologist and are going to be critical of this. And there's a lot going on there, and there's a lot going on a lot of different levels there. Those people are idiots. There's no doubt about that. I will say this, that if you're a fan of Biles, if you're a fan of the Olympics, and you're just in your heart feeling a little disappointed that you won't get to see her compete at her top level, I think that's okay. It's okay to be disappointed. It's just not okay for you to take it personally because it wasn't for her. I know that we get to live vicariously through these athletes as we adopt them as our, either as admirers of them around the world or people that share their passport. But that's kind of the artificial aspect of the Olympics. And I think that when you talk about the Olympics, and one thing that really struck me as a final thought on this, Kevin, is, and I'm going to bring our friend, the race walker into this, Evan Dunphy, again, because we have had an opportunity to talk to an elite athlete who has perspective on what the Olympics are that we can't have. And what he told us is that to him, the Olympics aren't any bigger than a world championship, aren't any bigger than other things he does. They're just part of what he does. And for you or I, or the people that listen to a show like this, we look at a decision like Biles has made and go, how can she possibly do this? This is the Olympics. We would chop off our left arm to have the opportunity to be in one. But they don't think that way and especially if you've already hit the pinnacle, right? Like to her, it's probably, and I'm speculating a bit here, it's probably about like, I can't reach this level that I want to reach. I'm worried that my head's not in it and I may injure myself further, as she said. Like, it's just different, right? Like, they don't necessarily have the same perspective on the event that we do. Yeah. They may have different priorities than we can understand or possibly understand because we've never been in their situation.
It's also a sport that if you mess up, you might land on your neck and break it. So to me, I can understand. And also the aspect of competing and the level that she's supposed to compete at. And if she doesn't reach that, people are going to blame anything or everything for that and on her and be like, what did she do wrong for it to not to attain the level that she was supposed to be at? And all that undue pressure can sometimes boil over. And it's not necessarily good to speculate. And once again, I want to reiterate that the best decision for these athletes, it's the athletes themselves to know. We don't know how they actually feel inside or how the pain level, regardless of what type of pain it is, the pain level could be heavy. The mental pain, physical pain, combination of both can drive anyone to a tough decision like Simone Biles took with consultation with her team, of course.
Of course, yeah. It just is a very fun thought of that. And then I'll segue us into our final little topic we're going to go to before that. I do think it's noteworthy that two athletes that are highly profiled in this mental health sort of kind of conversation that we're having now are both athletes of color, and they're both involved in these games, and they both had disappointing games. Osaka, the torchbearer, the lit flame, out in the second round, out badly in the second round, has pulled out of several majors this year. That's a topic and a conversation that's been ongoing in the world of sport. Had Five Rings been going on weekly between the games like it had prior to that, prior to Sochi, then we probably would have had a conversation about her and about those issues leading up to this. And if we have an opportunity to have more deeper conversations about sport in the days ahead after these games, when we're not so focused on the medals and stuff, then I think we will have those conversations again. But I think it's worthwhile to say that in both cases, these are athletes of color. You can also go back even to the Euros that we had in soccer today and the England penalty takers that missed and all the abuse that they got there. All of that plays a factor into the mental health of these athletes. The blunt racism that they get, the criticism they get because they're athletes of color, it's higher. And we as white men, I think, need to understand and appreciate and respect the fact that they have a different experience than the rest of us. And we have to understand that that's going to take a mental toil that we can't even remotely possibly understand. Just wanted to put that out on the table as well.
No, there's no way we can understand. The only thing we can do is listen and try to empathize. And even then, we can just try our best. But there's realities that, for unfortunate reasons, we can't even understand that level of pressure. But that level of pressure is what, unfortunately, some people would say that's the price of it all. And that is unfortunate. And once again, Simone Biles, hopefully she does what she needs to do. And that's all we can say. Now let's move on to a different topic. 3x3 basketball wrapped up today. We saw the USA women's team win that tournament earlier today versus Rock. Yes, the Rock. If you smell what the Rock is cooking, usually it's chemicals. Anyways, that's why they're called the Rock. That's Duane told me off air. But USA versus Rock in the women's final, USA got the better of the Rock. They pinned it for 3. 1, 2, 3, new champion.
Yeah, well, the men's competition just wrapped up like 48 seconds ago at the time of recording with a, I'd call it a 3-pointer, but it's a 2-pointer because the rules are 2 and 1 rather than 3 and 2. But you know what I mean. Behind the line, Latvia with its first gold medal of this games and a rare gold medal for Latvia in the summer games. They have a few more in the winter games where they have a couple more.
I was going to say there's no luge. There's no luge in the summer game. If there was summer luge, maybe Latvia would have a few more medals.
Yeah, exactly. But very exciting final that they ended up there. Ends with a shot, like it ends on the point, right? Like if it's first to 21 or the leader after the 12 minutes, I believe it's 12 minutes. It's an interesting format. I wanted to bring it up real quickly because we haven't had a chance to talk about it, and because of the way that I have to cover everything and Kevin has to cover everything, and because I have the main network. The way my setup is, I've sent photos out a couple times. I have three screens going most times, and I can crank it up to 4 if I have to with my phone. I don't like to go to 4 unless there's something I really want to focus in quickly on for 3 or 4 minutes, because 4, even for my ADHD brain, makes it a little crazy. But the point I'm making with this is I have to choose what TSN, the secondary channel, is playing. Whatever they're playing, I have on. I have whatever the main channel is on, and I have to pick one OTT stream. And that, because I have to focus on the big events, means that some events kind of get lost. And I think 3-on-3 kind of got a little bit lost, not only because I'm generally going to drill in on rowing or something where there's a potential for medals that are going to be interest to me and interest to Canadians, which is where we're from. So that's why I picked those streams. But the mains, networks haven't been showing it either, and I think that's kind of a shame because when I did have an opportunity to watch it in this, and I watched all the medal finals today, I found it to be quite refreshing compared to what I have seen a lot of, and has nearly driven me to sleep at 3 a.m. And that's the actual basketball tournament on the men's side. We're talking about the men's more than the women's game because it's a little different when you're talking about women's sport there, because the professional level isn't nearly as high as the men's level for reasons that are wrong, but we can't fix right now. So put that on the shelf and don't think I'm trying to be disrespectful to women's sport. But the men's tournament, watching the Dream Team games, like I watched that Iran game last night, the U.S.-Iran game, and like, why? Why was I doing that? But these games today were exciting. They ended on a last-second shot. You have Latvia, a country like that, winning. You had China win a medal earlier today. It's just very exciting to me. It's a shame that we didn't in this country get to see a lot of it if you were relying on the television networks and not finding the streams. And Canada wasn't involved in the tournament, so that's why it wasn't on the main networks here. It's just a shame because I think it's a better option, and I think that in a lot of cases, and we've talked about this as a topic on Five Rings before, maybe finding the more street version, the more TV-friendly version of these sports is the answer moving forward than going with the traditional ones, because those traditional ones have highly established professional leagues that have such a massive fan base now that they're only ever going to get a bad comparison with. Mm-hmm. And that's where I come down on this. And it's like we watched the hockey tournament in Pyeongchang, and it was hard to watch because there were no NHL players there, and that's shameful because the Winter Olympics should be framed by a hockey tournament, but because of that, it wasn't. Just a thought. The 3x3. I don't know. What do you think of the 3x3?
I thought it was interesting, and I thought it should stay, of course. And I thought that it could be interesting too if maybe the pros go play 3x3. That's maybe way to go, or maybe not. Maybe just keep it this way too. And it is a circuit that actually exists, and there's a professional league now of 3x3, so it is an interesting aspect. On that note, Duane, let's start with our wood medal for today. And our wood medal took place last night, early in day 5, rowing competition on the Sea Forest Waterway. And I guess the trees went down in the forest because the weather disturbing the rowing competition once again. The wind even capsized Team Norway. Shocking images of athletes being rescued in big quotation. They were never really in trouble. They're just there waiting for that boat to come over. The little what's it called? In French, it's a Zodiac, but I guess in English, it's a dinghy. Yeah, it's a dinghy. So they're trying to get into the dinghy, and it's not that easy. And eventually made it all the way back to the dock and the pier. But rare images of double skulls capsizing at the Sea Forest Waterway.
I believe a dinghy would be a very specific form of a sailboat. A sailing expert would have to chime in here to give this. So there's probably sailing people that are upset at our classification of floating vehicles.
It's interesting though, because when I buy, when I'm playing Grand Theft Auto and I buy a yacht, it comes with a little boat that looks exactly like that with a little motor. It's called a dinghy. So
yeah,
that's what I was thinking.
It's a sailboat with the dinghy, but we haven't watched a lot of sailing either for a lot of reasons. Sailing's tough to watch because it's just so far out there on the water, just like surfing. Anyway, the weather yesterday, and like we've harped on the weather a little bit here on our wood medals, and part of that is because I don't like to bash on athletes when it comes to a wood medal, but it's all our organizing for that matter. But it did seem like there might have been a decision to be made yesterday in some of those later heats. It started pretty okay, and then it got worse and worse and worse. You mentioned the boat that went over. There was also the British fours that they were eliminated first time in 20 years. They didn't win the gold medal. So they didn't even medal, and they had been the gold medalist since Sydney. So the British fours almost like rammed into the boat that was crossing them. I forget the nation right now off the top of my head, but it was just bad. The wind was blowing everywhere. I mean, it's part of the sport because it's an outdoor sport, but sometimes you have to make a tough decision. I guess you also have to acknowledge that there's a bit of bad luck here. A typhoon hit China, and then the remnants of that hit Japan, which forced them to push the rowing competition for 2 days.
Yeah.
They were being cautious, and then it turned out they probably could have had it one of those days, which now they're up against it because they've got to get the canoeing and kayaking on there next. And you only have so many days in the Olympics, and that's the big problem. And the more events you try and crunch in, and they are trying to crunch more events in, and that's for good reasons, because they want to even the men's and women's events, which they should have done, 100 years ago. But they're doing it now, so good. So what's the answer other than expanding the days? They already had 4 days before this thing started.
Exactly. Well, just make it a. By the way, Duane, I have confirmation here. Our research department do confirm that it is in case a dinghy, and we see it on the screen right now. It is a dinghy. It is that type of boat, literally. So.
All right, but now I know. I did this once a couple of years ago. I think. I know what it was for. It was when I was doing the previews for Rio. I had to figure out what all the classifications were. So had you asked me in 2016, if you're new to listening to us, back then I had a little more time in my hands, so I did a preview of every event in the entire Olympics. It's gonna be like 3 months.
Yeah, but the dinghy is the boat, Duane, that Go Rescues. It's the rescue boat. So it's like the inflatable boat. That's the dinghy. So that's not the boat they compete in. So.
It's a classification, and it doesn't matter. Anyway, he's called the dinghy. Good for that. Anyway, that's good. The weather was bad yesterday, and I wish they could have done something better so it would have been fairer for everyone. There's one more day of rowing left tonight, and it's going to be an exciting one. So hopefully they get good weather, because there were some great races last night. I will say that about this competition, as much as we're giving it a wood medal right now. There were some really competitive boats out there, and what's great about rowing is about 25 years ago, the Rowing Federation recognized that it had a problem on its hand, and that problem was one that a lot of sports share. That is that, whenever a sport starts in a place and wherever there's a little bit of money needed to be involved in that sport, it tends to be the same 4 or 5 countries always win everything. And although those same 4 or 5 countries are still pretty successful, there's been a lot more countries that have started to become competitive in rowing. And we saw that last night. We saw a lot of Dutch boats win. We saw a Romanian boat that was dominant in its win and its gold medal. We saw an Irish boat win a medal. It's just not a Commonwealth and U.S. sport anymore, and that's for the benefit of the sport. Even though we as Canadians get less medals then. And right now we have no medals, and it's beginning to look a lot like Rio, but that's a topic for Rowing Canada to figure out, not the the Rowing Association.
And they've already been trying to figure out Rowing Canada. It's been an eventful 4 years, and one day maybe we'll dive into what happened there with Rowing Canada. Let's now move to our poutine medal. Goes to Hugo Hull, a professional cyclist, ride for the team called Pro Astana. Of course, a team that is managed right now with a lot of Canadian in that team, of course. And there's also a Canadian team on the peloton. That's Mike Wood's team called Israel Startup Nation. We talked about this when we talked about Michael Woods finishing the road race a couple of days ago. But Hugo Hull finished 13th of this 44.1 kilometer men's time trial. Part of that time trial took place on the Fuji race circuit. It was fun to see that event. It's great roads for that, and eventually also led to great mountain shots. It was a hilly time trial. If you are a cycling fan, it was not an easy one. It was a pretty big profile, and if I could take a second and make you look here at the circuit. So we have the Fuji International Speedway here. It was 2 laps of the circuit of 22.1 kilometers. You actually went on the slope of the Fuji Mountain too and come back to the circuit. The start and finish line was on the start and finish line of the racetrack, just in front of the pit lane. And so that's the raceway here. And when we're looking at the profile of this stage line too, it was a pretty difficult stage. So when you look at it here, it was quite a difficult hilly circuit with 2 big climbs, and then also a climb towards the end, which favored very strong riders like winner of Tour de France or former, I would say, world champion and amazing cyclists like Primož Roglič, who's one of the best in the world on the podium of the Tour de France over these years, and one of the favorite going forward, Tom Dumoulin, very big name. If you have followed the Tour de France over the last few years, you know, these riders, the riders that have won stages, that have finished on the podium, have won time trial. Tom Dumoulin is one of the best time trials in the world. Rohan Dennis is one of the best too. We're talking about former world champions here in Tom Dumoulin, Rohan Dennis. Remco Evenepoel finished 9th. He's one of the up-and-coming stars in the world of cycling. A Belgium finished 6th too, Wout van Aert, and Wout van Aert finished 2nd in the road race, so it's his second great performance. 6th in the road race for Wout van Aert in such a difficult race is really a good performance here. Rigoberto Urán of Colombia finished 8th. He's always there when we talk about the Tour de France and the big mountain stages. So another good performance here by a few riders. And for the Canadian to finish 13th, it's really impressive to me because he's 13th. He's around where? Well, close to Geraint Thomas, who won the Tour de France before, just a few years ago. He's just behind Geraint Thomas with 10 seconds different. And he's in front of riders like Almeida, Nico Arndt of Germany, Cavana of France, an up-and-comer. Portugal is really good here. Brendan McNulty, who did a great race on the road race and eventually ended up exploding and saw the Ecuadorian Carapaz won, while McNulty finished 24th in this time trial. So it tells you how great of a performance it is for Hugo Duane.
Yeah, and I was, as I said, I was watching this live throughout. Hugo actually led this for a long time. Now, look, it's flighted, so seated, kind of, and he was in the lowest of it. So his rank going in put him out very early. I think he was the 6th or 7th cyclist out on the course. The very best go off is the final 13 riders. He won his entire flight of the lower seeds and finished, I think, second of the once they're second. He was either second or third. He was still on the podium when the second flight finished. Even it was only when the very, very top riders in the world, time trialist specialists that went out there that are world class guys that have won, you know, time trials on the tours, on the big events, right? Like it was only them that got past him. And this is a guy that, you know, he's a professional cyclist. They all are, but he's not one of the bigger names. He's what's the name for them?
He's a domestique most of the time. So most of the time he's there to support his rider and support his teammates. In the past, he's been in the support of Jakob Fuglsang for Astana and other great riders, but he's never really the go-to guy. He's usually there to support. And what I mean by support in a cycling race is literally sometimes support the other guy when he needs to go what we call a nature break. Also be there bringing the bottles, the bidon as we call, bringing the food from the car to the peloton where your road captain is. Sometimes you're the road captain too. Hugo Hull has grown in power in his professional career, and he's at his pinnacle of his fitness right now. And that's the benefit of cycling, is most of the cyclists are all exiled in Girona or other part of Spain, France, Italy. In Tuscany, there's a lot that are in that part of the Girona and the Verona, all these areas in Europe. That's the habit of cycling for the cyclists themselves. So when the pandemic hit, well, they could just continue riding. So a lot of the cycling world hasn't really changed in its hierarchy with the pandemic. And we're seeing those results at this high level, which benefited in a way Hugo Hull too, because he's able to, one of the few Canadians that his training regimen did not change as much as other sports.
Fair enough. Yeah. I think it's funny that I've been to Girona and Kevin, you at the Cycling Freak have not. It's a beautiful city. You should go one day at any rate. Yeah.
Don't bike there. Don't bike there. There's too many mountains.
Yeah, there's bikes everywhere. And it's like when I went there, I didn't actually know this little, well, I'd read it in the guidebook, but I didn't really know to the extent I know now how big of a cycling hub it is. So when we were walking through this and going to the cafe and you see all these like $40,000 looking bikes around, you go like, that's weird. And now I know why. I was looking at probably, famous people. Yeah. Anyhow,
and when you say 40,000, you're barely exaggerating. $22,000 usually it's the price of a professional biker's bike.
the last thing I wanted to say about this Pucci medal is Hugo is the TO 2015 gold medalist in the time trial here. So I wanted to just get that nod out there because this show owes a lot of its origins to that to the Pan Am Games in 2015 and here in the Toronto, the city I'm in, because that's what we did it in Sochi. And I think the reason we kept going is because a year later there was going to be games in my backyard. And I think we were kind of hoping maybe they might give us more than they did. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. However, it was a lot of fun. And there has been a lot of athletes that I have been watching and go, I kind of remember watching. And then I look it up and go, yeah, I saw her. So that's kind of neat. Anyway.
On that note, Duane and I will take a short break. When we come back, we will have our bronze, silver, and gold medal for day number 5. You are listening to the Five Rings Podcast with Kevin Laramee and Duane Rollins. You can follow us on Twitter at Five Rings Podcast. Podcast version available at sportspodcastingnetwork.com. You can support us financially by going to patreon.com/sportspodcastingnetwork. And you want to see the video replay of this show? You want to enjoy the stats, the faces, the beautiful graphics? Well, you can do so anytime you want on our YouTube page at youtube.com/sportspodcastingnetwork. Back on the Five Rings Podcast, Kevin Laramee, myself, and Duane Rollins talking about day 5 of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. Duane, this is the time to give our choices, the choices of the day, and it all starts with the bronze, the first step of that podium. And the bronze medal for day number 5 is, yes, Ariarne Titmus. You have to be careful when you say that last name, so I was taking my time. But what a performance at the women's 200-meter freestyle, a new Olympic record, of course, 1 minute, 53 seconds, and 50/100th of a second. She has been there all the way with Katie Ledecky so far in these games and beating her as often as ever before. And we're seeing this 200-meter, that's where Penny finished third. Penny Alexa, Canadian, finished on the podium. So we wanted to mention that too. And I want to mention too Siobhan Hoey, who's an athlete originally from Hong Kong, representing Hong Kong, also living in the United States, alumni of Michigan and racing for Michigan in the NCAA for swimming. And she won, of course, a silver medal in this same event. But great performance by Ariarne Titmus. Great race by Siobhan, and of course by Penny, who won her 6th medal, which makes her equal to the biggest Canadian Olympian ever. And now there's a few names that we can mention. Soon enough, there'll be only one, and there'll be Penny.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and to go to the actual renamed, a dominant performance by an Australian swimmer who has really, you mentioned, the rivalry there. We'll talk more about that in a minute. It hasn't been much of a rivalry race. It's been like the U.S. women versus the Canada women in soccer rivalry, that kind of thing.
So exactly, like he won everything except this year. Titmus is having her time.
Yeah, well, Titmus is having the time now, though, right? Like
exactly,
not having the best of games, and we will get to her in a minute. Don't worry, there's a spoiler, but. So it was a great race, and it's been a pretty fun competition because of its lack of. There hasn't been that one global superstar, like I said, in the past, but there have been a lot of great performances. To speak to the other side of it, it was the first swimming medal ever for Hong Kong. That was worthwhile, and is originally why I brought it forth as a potential medal. And then we started to look at this and say there's a story for all 3 medals here. So really, we're kind of giving the medal to the event, right?
Yes.
So that's great.
And I do like to highlight Olympic records. So far, the world records have been, I don't even think we have any world records so far, not in swimming at least. There's been a few in weightlifting. The men weightlifting, the Chinese who won earlier today, I believe was a world record. And there's been a few other world records in archery and in shooting and in a few other disciplines. But in the pool, even though the pool has been saying it's really good, it's not considered a fast pool, and we haven't seen a lot of world records yet, but we've seen a few Olympic records in the pool.
4x1 women's freestyle relay broke the world record. The Australians.
Yes, the Australian, right. That was an impressive performance. These 4 women that destroyed the field.
Yeah, I think you might see a world record tonight in the 4x2 freestyle with the Australians as well, because they are on their level when it comes to the relays there. And it's also countered with the fact that the Americans are on a bit of a downswing when it comes to their relays. The American program in general, and this will segue us into the medal we have there. I don't know if it's next or second next. You can let me know. But
it'll be second next. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, second next. I'm making up terms because it's some punch drunk. But anyway, they're having a bit of a down Olympics for them. Like capital F, capital T for them. They're having a bit of a down Olympics. Like normally you see like Americans going 1-2 in like multiple events a night. That's not quite happening tonight. No. It's just sometimes happening.
Yeah. Anyway. No, I have same, and I think there's a lot of reason for that. First of all, when you have to replace the top, it's tough. And it's the first Olympic in 20 years where there's no Phelps. But that's across not only swimming, there's a few sports like Usain Bolt is gone. There's no, it's like when Ric Flair left, it's tough to be the man who replaces the man. It's going to be hard to replace Ric Flair. So Ric Flair is Michael Phelps. Ric Flair is, I don't know why I'm using Ric Flair as a reference. If you don't know who Ric Flair is, Google it. You'll get it.
Olympics.
Yeah, exactly. The people know, he actually fought in like 4 of the Olympic venues Ric Flair actually had matches in, like from the Budokan to the Tokyo Dome to other places. Ric Flair has been there before because he's styling and profiling. All right, enough of the Ric Flair references, but that's what happens, and it creates a void, and there's nobody taking that ownership, at least to the same level. Like no one is winning just everything, which means maybe it's a little bit more of a level playing field. But we'll talk about Katie Ledecky later. But that was our first bronze medal. Once again, it was for Ariane Titmus, women's 200-meter freestyle gold medal with a new Olympic record of 1:53.50. Now let's move to our silver medal for this day number 5. It is the men's rugby 7 Fiji, winning for the second Olympic in a row the gold medal. They beat the All Blacks in the Olympic final. Once again, you deserve to win that tournament when you beat the All Blacks and you come back from behind in that game. And then you gather at midfield and you start singing together a very beautiful song. That copyright reasons, we can't show you the images here, unfortunately. But Google it, you'll enjoy it. And maybe this time around, they'll create a new banknote. Did you know that for this rugby hotbed, Duane, after winning the first ever gold medal in the men's rugby 7, the government and the treasury of Fiji created the equivalent of it's a $7. Let's use dollar. I don't know what their terminology is for their currency, but a 7-unit currency that was representative of the rugby championship of 2016 in Rio. And people were just getting them and not using them. It became very valuable and very sought after. I think maybe we're going to see a 14-unit currency note coming in the Fiji Islands soon.
Yeah, I suspect that not just people in Fiji were buying the $7 unit, as you say, because it's that's kind of a special thing. But what's remarkable about the Rugby Sevens tournament is how it has opened the door for team competition for a lot of nations that just would not have ever found themselves in an Olympic event in any other way. And it's something that I think that the Olympic movement has not done a good enough job on in the past. They are entirely too Euro focused in terms of the sports that they had. Rugby was held back for a long time because it isn't widely played outside of a little bit of Italy and the British country, the British, sort of the Four Nations stuff, right? And France. So there's a very small slice of Europe plays it, and that slice of Europe wasn't necessarily sevens specialists. The sevens are an event that smaller nations that often have Commonwealth attachments, but smaller nations that have taken up rugby can excel at, because it only requires 7 players. It doesn't require the full amount, right? Like you can get more with less. Fuji, for God's sakes, it's a
Well, Fiji,
nation.
Fuji's the mountain. Fiji's the island.
Yeah. Well, you can understand how I'd make that mistake.
I know. I apologize for correcting you. I did not mean to.
Well, yes, Fiji. And I say Fuji all the time when I'm talking about Fiji. That's my own mental block I have. It's tiny. It's a little tiny nation. It didn't have a gold medal other than this. To win it in the team is amazing, and obviously it's a national sport, the national obsession for them down there, and they are able to do this. Like, they go toe to toe with countries much bigger than them. Like Canada was in this event as well. It's a country of 20 times bigger than it that has rugby as a tradition, not the same level, but Canada was in the 7-8 game, right? Like that's with Australia, another big country.
Yeah, we lost the first game 44-0. Okay, so was it 24-0? Anyway, we didn't score a point in our first game, then regardless. So that tells you.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the sport. And look, I think that the IOC needs to do a better job of this, and I think that it should teach them a lesson of how this is done and how this is seen around the world. And the women's competitions today and here in Canada, we'll see a lot more of it because Canadian women are contenders in that one. So it will be probably profiled a lot on the CBC, and it was in the last Olympics. It was a lot of fun. And it's a lot of fun of an event. And I remember watching it last time and going, we should watch more of that. It should be, but then it's not around. You have to seek it out. Anyway.
Yeah, because then it's like, oh, yeah, do they play it at the Commonwealth Games? I believe they do so. But
Commonwealth Games are hard to find out, too. I think they're next year, aren't they? Anyway.
I don't know. Were they in 2019? I believe so.
I'm all mixed up because of the extra year
the
here.
The Pan Ams were in 2019. I think the Commonwealth were in 18.
Yeah, the Commonwealth Games are on Winter Olympic years, so they are next year.
So they are next year. So there you go. That tells it. So now I think it's time to talk about the biggest moment for us last night, the gold medal, and it's for the performance. Well, for us it was last night. For her, it was in the morning in the first ever 1500 meter, but it's not the only reason why she's our choice today. Of course, we are talking about Katie Ledecky. She's got the gold medal in the 1500 meter Olympic distance. First time for the women, finally. Yes, it's 1.5 kilometers of swimming. It took 15 minutes, 37 seconds, and 34/100th of a second. A new Olympic record. It's obvious. It's the first time it happened at the Olympic. But it's not her only Olympic medal. And I thought it was worth it to take a look at her career at the same time. We don't do that enough on this daily show. She has in her career multiple Olympic medals, Duane, from a gold medal 800 meter free in 2012, another gold medal 200 meter, this time in Rio, 400 meter gold in Rio, 800 meter gold in Rio. Those are all freestyle, by the way. She also has a gold in a 4x200 free in Rio, a silver in the 4x100 free in 2016, also in Rio, and at the 2020 Games already 2 medals. She silvered in the 400 meter free, and she also have a 100 the gold in this event. So that tells you a lot. And Katie Ledecky, our gold medal for day 5.
Yeah. I also wanted to highlight that she's not having, for her, again, capital F, capital H, for her, she's not having a good games. She just won a gold medal, but she's not having a good games because normally she's dominant. And she's been dominant for a long time in the scene. She came on the scene when she was 14. You mentioned 2012 medals. A 14-year-old winning 2012 medals. She was the star, the breakout star of those games in the American team. And to become a breakout star in the American team means you're doing something rare or special. For her to be 3 games later and still there, and only 24, she has another games in her probably if she wants them. And she's, her family is well off, so she can, if she wants to keep pushing, she can. She doesn't need to, go chase her law degree or something like other athletes might have to. And I'm not saying that to be dismissive. It's just a fact of reality, right? That you have to factor that in. I suspect that we will see her in Paris, and that will probably be her final Olympics, and she will win more medals likely. But this has been a down Olympics. And mentally, I think for someone who's used to winning, if they're not necessarily winning, and particularly in the 200, which went earlier and we talked about already, she didn't even medal. And that's something that never happens to her. It hasn't happened to her forever at any level. And she didn't medal. And then an hour later, she's back in the pool and she's the favorite. And this is the first time it's been out there. And this field is not as deep as it's going to be in 4 years. But still, she had to go run that race and do that race. And she did that race and she did it. And she put aside the disappointment of not medaling. And you saw it in her face. This is a person, again, who has done nothing but win through her Olympic career. That's the other thing. When you win a lot, sometimes the wins become routine to you and you don't show emotion and you forget maybe what kind of an accomplishment it was. Her face betrayed that last night when she won. It was very almost like she re-understood it, like the first time again, and that was kind of nice to see. And I also wanted this one to be up there today because it was the first time that the 1500 meter has been included in the Olympics. That is ridiculous. It should have been in there for ages. Like, they have been condescending in their own way.
It's too, Duane, no, 1500 meters, it's too long. Women shouldn't swim that long, right? Only 800. That's the max. That's so stupid. Of course, I'm being sarcastic here.
Yeah, I remember watching... when was the World Aquatics in Montreal? What year was that?
That was 2005.
Yeah, and there was the Canadian girl that won medals in the long distance races that time, and I remember thinking at my time then, and I knew this going in, like, that this is a shame that this event's not in the Olympics because she has a legitimate chance in the 1500. I think she might even won the World Championship in Montreal in the 1500 back then, and I forget her name, and I should remember her name. I can picture her, but I can't remember her name.
Oh, Audrey Lacroix, is that it? And it's
she's
too long
blonde.
ago.
I remember she's blonde.
So, okay, so keep talking. Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah, at any rate, like, just that whole thing. Like, that's just one example of personal to me, that remembering how ridiculous it was that the women weren't involved in the long distance events. And I think that it's way overdue that it's there. And thank God that they didn't take another one away, because they've done that before in track, where they've taken an event off the table for them to just add the longer one when they were quite brutally forced to, in their mind. Like, that's how the track people did it. But at any rate, it's good that they've done it. Do we have a name yet or no?
No, I do not have a name yet, Duane.
All right. So, well, I'll tell you what. I'll look it up after we hang up, and if I remember, we'll
just give me give me 15 seconds. We'll have it. But it doesn't really matter at this point. But that was a great competition in Montreal a long time ago. But when we're looking at here, and yes, I'm just trying to find time. Women. No, okay.
Right, how about tell you, Kevin? If you want to keep looking, I'll tell you what I'm looking forward to watching tonight. Couple things. I want to watch the BMX tonight. I love the BMX. I love how it's kind of like in the Winter Olympics, when they go around the course, it's the race. The BMX is a lot like that. So that's what I'm looking forward to tonight.
It's kind of like the free cross. It's Brittany Reimer. Brittany Reimer.
Yes, there you go.
See, I told you I just needed a few seconds to scroll down. Brittany Reimer finished actually third in the 1500 meter freestyle in 2005 back in Montreal, won by Kate Ziegler of the United States. No relation to Dolph, by the way, if you are another. This is another wrestling reference. Flavia Rigamonti finished second. Brittany Reimer actually finished second in the 800 meter freestyle also on that competition, which was won the diving by Alex DePetsy. Let's not forget. But Duane, it's time. It's time before we say goodbye that we take a look at the medal count, the medal standings at the recording of the show live on day 5 Eastern time at 10:33 a.m. in the morning. This is your medal standings. Japan, who just won another gold medal, by the way, in the men's all-around final in gymnastics. For now, 13 golds for Japan, 12 gold for China, US 11 gold, ROC 7. By the way, the gold for gymnastics is included here. Same for the silver of China and the rock also, if you're wondering. Australia is 5th right now in the standings with 6 gold medal. Great Britain is 6th with 5 gold medal, and Canada still 11 with 2 gold medals.
Yeah, Canada's exceeding. There's a website out there that tracks the medals and expected medals, and Canada's actually leading the count of more above expectation right now than any other nation in the world. I'll try and find that link and put it out on the Twitter account later
I
tonight.
love that stats because it's kind of like the expected goal of our amateur sports world, because of course we're both soccer journalists here. So expected goal is something I'm a soccer statistician, so expected goal is something that I live and die for in a way. That in corners for some reasons are my little my dada, as would say. But expected medal versus actual medal, it's a good stat, and Canada's over 1 point something there, so that's good.
It's 3. They have 3 more medals than they were expected to have at this point in the games, and they're tracking for 29 medals according to that website. So I'll put that out on the Twitter account, which is at 5 Rings Podcast, later today, or at my personal podcast, which is at 24th Minute. And before we say goodbye tonight, I just want to thank Brittany Reimer for her great career representing Canada in the early aughts. I think that she would have had some medals in the Olympics had she had that 1500 to chase. That's my final thought for the day. Thank you, Brittany Reimer, for you representing the country well in the early part of the aughts.
Thank you, Brittany. Not the other Brittany, this Brittany. On that note, you can follow Duane on social media, of course, at 24th Minute, and myself at Kev Laramee. When I say social media, it's not only Twitter, but it's also Instagram. Give us some Instagram love, because we need it. And until tomorrow, for Duane Rollins, I'm Kev Laramee. We are looking forward to more swimming finals tonight. Penny's going for more medals. It's going to be more great competitions. And of course, the women all-around final will take place during day 6, and once again, Simone Biles and Ellie Black will be missing from this competition, but we will have a close eye on that competition. But as always, until next time, for Duane Rollins, I'm Kev Laramee. Enjoy your Olympiad.